case history of 31-year-old female. She has presented with the features of cholecystitis, multiple prior hospitalization for similar complaints with underwent laparoscopic cholecystectomy on 30th of October 2018. Patient had an impacted calculi at his neck of GP, sustained type E1 biliary injury, identified on table and converted to open cholecystectomy, and an XJ was performed. So patient, excuse me one minute. Okay. So patient developed postoperative bile leak and intra-abdominal collection, managed conservatively with Nilper oral, nutritional support, IV fluid and antibiotics. USG showed evidence of intra-abdominal collections. So this was the type of injury which happened during laparoscopic cholecystectomy. They identified the injury and they tried to manage. They did a loop hepatico-jejunostomy and a jejuno-jejunostomy. So subsequently, they performed a CT scan on 12th of November. I don't have the CT images with me. So the liver showed enlarged liver without any focal lesion or IHPRD. There is air-filled hypodense collection with smooth enhancing wall noted in the portohepatis, extending along the falciform ligament and anterior to the left lobe of liver into the supramesocolic compartment, measuring around 13.1 into 9.2 centimeter. Another well-defined collection in the inframesocolic compartment extending up to the pelvis with very close proximity to the jejunal loops. The jejunal loops in the inframesocolic compartment appears adherent to each other, and they could identify the hepatico-jejunostomy and jejunostomy with proximal limb of jejunostomy is distended with air chorioileus. There was no evidence of active extravasation of contrast from bowel loops. This is the report given by the CT scan person on 12th. So subsequently, they attempted USG-guided drainage of the collections, but the inframesocolic compartment could not be accessed properly because of fear of bowel injury. So the bile leak worsened subsequently, and patient's clinical status deteriorated. So a re-exploration was done on 17th of November. But they could not access the anastomotic site due to dense adhesions. But they tried to introduce a feeding tube, a small feeding tube into the CHD with difficulty. During this procedure, patients sustained multiple serosal injuries and they repaired with silk. Drainage of the collections and thorough washing was given, and wound closed with a big abdominal tray. So on third post-op day, patient had a severe dyspnea. So they ordered a CT, pulmonary angiogram with the CT of thorax with a suspicion of pulmonary embolism. That showed no evidence of pulmonary embolism, but showed a hypodense collection with peripheral enhancement in left subdiaphragmatic location of 5.7 into 2.5 centimeter and bilobar basal atelectasis. So after the re-laparotomy, patient developed leakage of enteric content through the wound. The tube which was introduced into the CHD got slipped off. Wound burst occurred, and patient was started on TPN and other supportive measures. General condition of the patients further worsened, and they transferred to surgical gastro department. So this was the picture when we saw the patient for the first day. There is total transection of the jejunal loop visible at the wound site. You can see the wound with bile draining and opened up jejunal limb. There is active wound leak, not able to contain or apply stoma bag or wound manager because of the peculiar type of wound these patients had. There is extensive area of skin excoriation. Patient's nutritional status was very poor, and the patient was too poor to afford total parenteral nutrition. So to summarize, a 31-year-old female post-lap chole biliary injury, status loop XJ and JJ, post-op biliary fistula with high output proximal jejunal fistula, deteriorating clinical course with multiple intra-abdominal collections and additions, too poor to afford total parenteral nutrition. Opinion? Doctor, sir?
Yeah, we'll start with Pari.
Hello.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Very, very difficult situation. So I really don't know. So it depends on the clinical decision whether you think the patient is going to stand a big major surgery where you can just go in and externalize the jejunal loop and make it a controlled, intracutaneous fistula. If it's already controlled, then probably yes, I will probably drain the collections and continue on TPN, and I'll put octreotide. And once the clinical condition is better, then she needs exploration. But you put in a rider saying that she's too poor to afford TPN. I think without TPN and other costly drugs, octreotide and all, it's very difficult to manage this patient. She looks already thin, bag of bones only, from what her picture you showed.
Shankar.
Yeah. The problem, yes?
Yeah.
Dr. Shankar.
Pradhapan, I think that's a very bad intracutaneous fistula. It looks like a type 4 Sheldon's. The main wound is completely dehisced, and you see bowel loops, and even the open bowel loops are seen. So right now the priority comes in terms of wound management plus nutritional support. So wound management, you can have different ways of managing the wound. Continuous low-grade suction with an op site. With octreotide, you can just buy some time so that the excoriation settles, and you can put a wound manager or something like that. So definitely, this is a very difficult situation, especially when it comes to the management of the wound itself. But we have to think out of the box and try out multiple measures to manage the wound. And there is no way we can run away from the fact that this patient needs a parenteral nutrition by hiding behind the fact that patient is poor. Because obviously, once the wound settles, at least we can try to pass a catheter through we are able to see a jejunal loop that is open. We do not know which part of the jejunum is open, and we can try to pass something like a Foley's catheter through the tube and fluoroscopic guidance. You check the position and can start enteral nutrition. So right now, patient needs wound management, and together we have to take care of the nutrition of the patient also. Both should go simultaneous. That's my opinion.
The issue here, there is an issue in this particular case, Dr. Shankar. This patient has a proximal jejunal fistula, because this happened very close to the site of hepaticojejunostomy, and they have done a loop HJ, not a Roux-en-Y anastomosis. So by whatever means, it's difficult to start her on nutritional support enterally, or even the jejunal limb is too big to afford to the tubes. I think to continue with the current management or not. Yeah.
My take, Pradhapan, as the other specialists have mentioned, that this is a very, this is a case which we don't want to see in our careers, actually. One. And two is, and it's a very, very bad intracutaneous fistula. As Shankar rightly put it, two important things are required is that the management of the wound, the skin and stuff, and two is nutrition. Of course, there are, I don't know whether you can afford wound managers, because they're quite expensive too. If that can be done, skin can be maybe saved to some extent. It's a man, right? It's a woman or a man? Again,
Female.
Female, oh, okay. So then the second thing is that you had a loop hepaticojejunostomy, the jejunojejunostomy.
Yeah, that is
if it is possible through endoscope, I'll still try to pass a tube across that into the distal limb, if it is the jejunal jejunostomy is away from the area which is leak, and something like a nasojejunal type of a feeding is, if possible, I'll explore it. But at the moment, nothing surgical for maybe a month or two before we really sort of do anything. Dr. Thiru, if you have a comment before we'll get back to Prathapan.
Actually, I would like to say.
Okay, we can't see you, sir. We have a camera.
No, I don't want. I am in a casual. I'll talk.
Okay, sir.
Actually, Radha, in Ward 10, we had so many experiences like this, not due to biliary enteric anastomotic leg, but we have seen any number of heterocutaneous fistulas with bad like this. What we used to do is we make it as a dependent drainage, either putting the patient in one of the sides, either left or right, whichever is nearer to the secretion. That's number one. If possible, you can try a double bed technique, little difficult only, and keeping a container in between the two cords so that the whole of the material drains into that and the wound will start shrinking. At one stage, if you manage like that, you will be able to put an appliance so that the skin excoriation is completely taken off. That is number one. Number two, that is what we used to do in the earlier years in ward number 10 when I was doing my post-graduation. Even as a general surgeon, I used to do that. It has worked out well, but now costly wound managers have come, but this patient is not affordable. Number two, nutrition, very, very important. You cannot maintain him for a long time with a total parenteral nutrition. Once the general condition comes within our reach, I have a feeling either what you said that I would like to place an enteral feeding distal to this jejunostomy, or if I am lucky, I would like to do a feeding jejunostomy with a risk. If I am able to identify distal part of the bowel, distal to the jejunostomy. Moreover, the more important, as the PGs are watching, this is one of the very unfortunate situations this patient had. First of all, when doing a laparoscopy, he has found it difficult. He must have converted immediately. After converting, if he is not able to do anything, simply you should have kept a drain and come out, because this must have been done by a person who is not experienced in biliary surgery. A good understanding is, if you are not comfortable, you put a drain and pass on the thing to a next person who is fit enough and who is technically sound enough to do a biliojejuno anastomosis, bilioenteric anastomosis at that stage. Otherwise, a simple drain would have saved the patient. He would have gone in for a fibrosis after a long fistula, and that patient would have been a best candidate for a second surgery, going a hepaticojejunostomy. So the take-home message for the postgraduates is, if you're finding it difficult, convert. If you're still finding it difficult, if you are on the wrong side, don't try to repair if you're not experienced as a biliary surgeon. Put a drain and come out. Try to send the patient to a tertiary care center. They will do a good job. If you don't do this, this is what is going to happen. So this is a thorough take-home message for the junior colleagues that they should not attempt a primary hepaticojejunostomy repair when they are not comfortable or when they are not technically sound. This is what I would like to say, Radha.
Yeah, Prathapan, back to you.
So can I add here, sir?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah. I think you put in a rider of financial issue, but in case that issue is not there, so nowadays wound management has been revolutionized by this wound wax. So there is one specific type of wound wax which is very, very handy in such patients, called Apthera wax. So we had a opportunity to use once or twice when we were not able to close the abdomen after liver transplant and all. So this Apthera wax is specifically designed for situations like this. So you can just apply the wax, and then it will rapidly shrink the wound, and then the wound becomes so much more manageable, easily manageable, and then very controlled. And then only thing is you have to maintain the nutrition with TPN, and I think it accelerates the wound. shrinking by many folds. So I'm very, I was able to understand and believe that only after using that. This Apthera wound vac.
A word about Apthera, Pari. Actually, on the YouTube, you'll find a video of mine in Apthera.
Okay.
So the issue is the bowel is open.
Sir, they have that special visceral protective layer, sir.
That's right. No, but if a bowel lumen is open, for instance, it will suck the bowel content also into it. I don't know, because I can't really make out if the bowel are intact, the integrity is good, and the patient has a lot of free fluid in the abdomen, this, that, and other, the swollen intestine, they all get settled down. But I don't know, with the open bowel, with the bile leaking, I really do not know about that. Now, having said that, before Prathapan goes into the nitty-gritty of HepJ and leak, I would like Pari and Dr. Thiru and Ilango will be joining shortly to comment on what could have happened at every juncture and how it could be, because this is too many things happened to leave a patient like this, because this doesn't generally happen. What are all the decisions that have gone wrong? If Prathapan, if you permit, Pari will look into it, and others will comment as well.
So my thought process is, you mentioned E1. I presume it is like complete transaction and loss of
complete transaction. Okay. So they misidentified the for the.
So there is a high chance that the right hepatic artery also got severed and lost. So the bile duct, whatever the remnant bile duct, is at risk of ischemia, and then they have done a loop jejunostomy, hepatojejunostomy, that is always at tension, more so, definitely more than a roux loop. So the bowel loop is under tension, and there is the very fact that somebody did a loop hepatojejunostomy shows that they are not very comfortable doing these type of surgeries. And then you are trying to anastomose to a non-dilated duct, and probably which is also ischemic. So the hepatojejunostomy itself leaked, and I also strongly suspect that probably there was a leak from the jejunostomy also. And whatever the bowel loop that you are seeing in the mid-abdomen probably is a opened up jejunostomy site. So I think he has got leak at both the sides.
So you do not prefer loop HepJ, right? You generally do not at all.
No,
Radha, can I comment?
Yes, sir, please.
See, to look at this has been done by a person who is technically not sound and experienced in biliary surgery. The moment he did a complete transection of the bile duct, he has got no business to go and do a primary repair, taking a loop and doing a JJ. He is thoroughly not very skilled person. That is what I understand over a period of years. See, the teaching now is, if you are not comfortable, especially when you have divided it, the thermal injury is likely to involve the cut end of the thing. The best thing is to drain that abdomen. Take it, give it about 8 to 12 weeks and take the patient for surgery when the patient goes in for an obstruction. It will get a dilated bile duct. You will be able to do a beautiful side-to-side or an end-to-side hepatojejunostomy with a roux loop, provided you give it a time. Make it as a control fistula. Keep a bigger drain. That will solve the problem instead of doing all the things over the table when you're not experienced enough. This is what my comment would be.
Yeah. Prathapan, back.
Yeah, okay. So I just put those slides to read by the postgraduates. I don't want to discuss these things. So these are the issues in the bilic. Interrupted sutures are more prone to leak, and running sutures are more prone to stricture. These are all the messages. So the patient with a fistula less than 100 ml per day, most of them will resolve. This is after a hepatic jejunostomy, but more than 100 ml per day need endoscopic intervention. And early surgical intervention is indicated when the patient develop peritonitis, septic collection, which are not drained by the percutaneous drain, or failed attempts at PCD. But if there is a total biliary fistula, complete disruption, patient subsequently needs surgery. So this category of severity assessment, this category is grade C biliary leakage, because this patient definitely require a re-laparotomy. So these are the classification, and type E1 means there is a sufficient stem of the common hepatic duct to anastomose. So the mechanism of injury, I'm not going into detail, can be of different type, but if there is a stone impacted in the GB neck, there will be a very short cystic duct, and that might have produced these issues. So the goals of therapy in biliary injury: control of infection, limiting inflammation, antibiotic percutaneous drain, clear and thorough delineation of entire biliary anatomy, and re-establishment of biliary. This requires a lot of time, patience, and experience. So these are the hepatogoid biliary anastomosis. So this is for the postgraduates. So this patient has got an intracutaneous fistula. The treatment goal in intracutaneous fistula, the restore bowel continuity, that is most important, achieve oral nutrition and closure of the fistula. So management is divided into 3 phases: acute phase, subacute phase, and repair and reconstructive phase. So phase 1, you diagnose, resuscitate, and stabilize. Phase 2, good nutritional assessment and wound management. And phase 3, you have to define the anatomy and subsequently consider the corrective surgeries. So usually the acute phase lasts for 5 to 7 days of the surgery. So the early reopening, drainage of collection, refunctionalization of bowel, and diversion procedures. Avoid re-anastomosis, as Dr. Thiru mentioned. Don't try to do any anastomosis in this phase. So management in the acute phase: fluid resuscitation, control of sepsis, electrolyte repletion, provision of nutrition, control of fistula drainage, and commencement of local skin care and protection. So there is a window period described, that is around 7 to 12 days after surgery. The severity of adhesions are milder in this period. You can do a repeat laparotomy with the intent of diverting stoma or repairing fistula. But after this window period, it is very difficult. So you can have the graph showing the severity of adhesions. As day passes, the severity of adhesion increases. It takes at least 6 months to come back to the immediate post-op status. So the re-entry into the abdomen is a very difficult task in early cases. So outside the window period, there is risk of further enterotomy and fistula formation, devascularization of bowel and further bowel loss. It's a limit to drainage the undrained collection and control fistula drainage, and avoid laparotomy outside window period. That is the important message. So this patient, I did these investigations. Hemoglobin was 9.2. Total count was a little elevated. INR was 1.3. Urea, creatinine, the hydration status, everything was normal, except that patient has got a very bad wound, transected jejunum, and completely leaking abdomen. So she never developed jaundice. She did not develop cholangitis. And abdomen, we did a USG abdomen, which showed a liver, normal liver, size decreased. Then no intrahepatic biliary radical dilatation, but there were free fluid in the peritoneal cavity. Evidence of multiple thick septate collections in the peritoneal cavity.
If I can interrupt Pradhaban here. Now you have a patient who's come in like that. You know, I don't know whether it is just bile leaking or bile plus entry contents leaking. We do not know.
Both leaking, sir.
Now, if we have to image this patient in terms of identifying, you know, what is where and which is leaking, what ideal imaging or what combination of imaging would you suggest?
So we require a combination of CT plus some form of a fistulogram or some MRI or other fistulogram technique. But if there is intra-abdominal collection, MRI will not give much information.
Okay, with the same question, I'll go back to the experts, Pari, Shankar, and Thiru.
No, I would not do ultrasound. I'll just for a CT scan. Ultrasound is not going to.
No, this was there. When the patient came, this ultrasound was there with the patient. So I just.
Yeah, that's okay. But if we had to do, I'll just probably do a CT scan and then probably put in a small gentle Foley's into the bowel, which is open, try to give the gastrographin and, and then do a CT and just understand what the anatomy is. Where is it going? Is it into the proximal limb or distal limb? How far we got and all those other information is important. So I will do a CT scan with this fistulogram. I wouldn't do ultrasound or MRI or anything. We need a good CT scan. We need
Okay.
to know if there is any drainable collections.
Shankar?
Okay.
Right now, only CT scan, sir. That's mainly to look for undrained collection and drainage of collections. But as far as the definitive management of intracutaneous fistula is concerned, once the patient is stable, then we have to do a repeat imaging to know the anatomy there. There you can use a combination of CT plus with oral contrast or fistulography, all those things you can do. So right now, as a resuscitation process to control the sepsis, we have to do a CT scan to look for any undrained collection.
Thiru?
The other two, Shankar and Pari, we'll have to see for any intra-abdominal undrained collection, which will take the patient to a catabolic state if you are not draining it. We'll have to remove the septic focus. Regarding entering into the bowel, it's $1 million question. Will you be able to do it? I would like to make the fistula as a controlled fistula. I would like to make all the effort to shrink down the wound so that it is easily manageable. And of course, there is no other go except a TPN right now because the entry route is very bleak in this patient. This is what I am thinking. One thing I want to ask Radha, somebody has said regarding the somatostatin, octreotide. If at all you give, how long you're going to give? What are the other implications? Somebody has said. So this is only for the benefit of the postgraduates. I would like you to tell about this. Somatostatin, how long you're going to give?
See, somatostatin in this sort of fistulas, maybe of negligible value, sir.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I would rather prefer somatostatin in pancreatic leak or post-Whipple's issues. But in this sort of a wide, huge cavity, I don't know, they may have some effect, but that might not be very beneficial to the patient. Since, it's not that expensive, maybe we can consider it. But otherwise, now my point, I totally agree with Shankar that the first point we are going to focus on is control of sepsis, if there's any intra-abdominal sepsis is there. But again, since there is an issue of parenteral nutrition in terms of economy, etc., I would still like to see which loop is what. For all you know, if the patient has a functioning jejunostomy that can still be used for enteral feeding, I would still think of, because there's a patient who can't take by mouth. We presume so. We can't take by mouth, and the food comes into the wound rather than into the distal small bowel. So I'll also would like to make an attempt to, because when we are doing a CT in this patient, injecting some bit of a contrast in one of the, because you can see so many loops there. What is what we do not know. I'll have some idea. That's my point. So because we are, our hands are tied as far as TPN is concerned. So whether the gut can be made use of.
Gut can be made use of, rather, provided there is no collection.
That's right.
If there is a collection, if you start feeding, it's not going to help.
I agree, because I totally agree with that point of collection as the first aim, sir. At the same time, if we can think of an access to feeding, because as you have rightly said, that in those olden days, Dr. Anna's days, and even in Delhi days, I remember, because we used to have so many tubes into every lumen we could get, because one of the lumen, will be useful.
Okay.
Yeah, Pradhavan. Sorry to interrupt, but because I just want to know what others thought as to how they proceed.
No, I did totally wrong as far as your theory is concerned, because I could not wait, because this patient was not in a position to continue the treatment. They were not in a position to.
No, if I interrupt again, Pradhavan, if I put up re-laparotomy, I think all the faculty, nobody will support in this regard.
There are some situations. This is the importance of presenting this case. There are some situations in which all the investigations you do will not help. All the method you learned will not help to save the patient, because this patient is having a hepatico-jejunostomy leak becoming a high jejunal fistula where we can't feed this patient, and total nutritional care was an issue. So I took the consent from the patient.
So
and
this is
discussed with
the
other colleagues.
third operation within a month or so?
So next month,
2
December,
months.
sir.
Okay.
Yeah, almost 2 months. So I thought of doing it relaparatory. So maybe against your wishes, but I had to do it because in a government situation, I don't know whether it is similar outside, not like this. So multiple perforations in the jejunal loop bearing the HA. It was not a single perforation with the thick adherence of bowel loops with each other, active leak at the HA site. It was almost completely disrupted. And there was a perforation seen in the ileum around 60 centimeter proximal to ICJ. Probably would have been communicating with the collections there. Multiple interloop collections distributed along the entire small. This is the issue, because even if you can access the bowel, if there are multiple mesenteric and interloop collection, you can't use the bowel for nutritional purpose. So we took a lot of time and dissected these adhesions with difficulty. So I had to resect, thinking that we will convert into a Roux-en-Y limb at least possible. And I did a Roux-en-Y HA after dismantling the previous anastomosis. Perforation in the ileum closed in 2 layers after freshening the edges. Thorough irrigation of peritoneal cavity performed. Wound closed with 228 French chest catheter, one in the pelvis and other near the HA. So this was the wound which I dissected, and subsequently I entered the abdomen through the wound. So it was with great difficulty I could access the hepatico-jejunostomy site. I could access the jejuno-jejunostomy site. I could identify the jejunum and ileum, and then I made it into a Roux-en-Y limb. So this patient was having a neurofibromatosis. So there was 2 or 3 neurofibromas in the hepatic hilum as well. So the biopsy of this tumor came as a neurofibroma. So I completed this dissection, and I thought of doing a re-anastomosis at the hepatico-jejunostomy site. So I know this is not, this is the appearance of the hepatic duct. You can see there is sufficient length of hepatic duct left behind for anastomosing, and the CHD looks healthy. Only problem is there is dense adhesions, and there is a lot of erythematous areas and inflammation around. So this is what I did in that surgery. So I did I know it is not with the standard teaching, but I had to do because of the other reasons as well. So I tried to continue with nutritional support. This patient developed post-op intestinal obstruction, post-op vomiting and all. So she was okay for next 7 days, except that we could not start full oral in this patient. So this is what I did. I resected it and converted into a Roux-en-Y HJ. So post-operatively, this patient started on oral feeds on 3rd day, but she was not tolerating full oral. Abdominal distension and persistent ileus. Drains removed on 5th post-op day. On 7th POD, there was a biliary fluid coming through the upper part of the wound. So this is not the immediate post-op picture. It is a delayed image I got. On inspection, there was an opening in the anastomotic limb. The opening increased and a patient developed prolapse of the mucosa. That is what you are seeing now. This is managed conservatively and patient got discharged on 12/1/2001. This is what happened in the first instance, and this patient was tolerating oral, and patient was discharged with a prolapsed jejunal loop in the proximal part and with the fistula there. So this patient continued to have biliary leak through the prolapsed bowel lumen, but she was tolerating oral feeding, continued on conservative management. But after around 6 months, this patient insisted on correction of fistula. So now we can comment on this.
Yeah, Pari.
Yeah, very brave surgery, Dr. Prathapan. Congratulations. So I would have done totally different. In first instance, probably I might not have operated, but anyway, you had your own reasons to do that. And several things I possibly might have done different is once you have seen that there were multiple perforations in that loop, I would have resected, which you did. And I would not have done a hepaticojejunostomy. I would have rather done a tube hepaticostomy and put in a drain at the hilum. I would have done a hepaticojejunostomy later. And
I agree with
I would have definitely done a feeding jejunostomy. And regarding the distal ileal perforation, that depends on how good or bad the ileum looked like. Whether I would have closed it or I would have done a ileostomy, I don't know, but that's a intra-op decision. But definitely, I would not have done a hepaticojejunostomy. I would have done a feeding jejunostomy, and I would not have closed the wound. I would have left the wound open. This is a totally infected wound. I would have left the skin open. I would have closed the sheath, yes, but I would have left the skin open. And that's what I would have done.
Shankar?
Yeah, sir. I also would have not operated this patient, but because it was the hostile period to enter the abdomen, because you will end up in more perforations. However gentle you are, sometimes you will end up in more tears, and the problem becomes much more complicated. So, but there are occasions where if the patient is septic, you may have to do something like a damage control, where we can gently do a hand dissection, and you can let out the collections and give a wash. But definitely, I will not attempt any hepaticojejunostomy or anything else because of presence of sepsis. So you can do something like a damage control exercise, and mainly to help you in the management of the wound. And sometimes you can pick up some surprises like a ileal perforation, which can be tackled. So definitely, if at all I have to do something like a damage control re-exploration, that will be only for giving a wash and something like a toileting. But there also we run the risk of injuring bowel and complicating the matter. So if everything ends fine, that's good. But it's an extraordinary situation where you do all these things. Yeah.
Thiru, sir?
Actually, Prathapan is lucky to come out with it only with a fistula. It is not an usual happening.
I think Prathapan is presenting with the case which is come out. He may not present the case.
No. Actually, what I would like to say is, first of all, the teaching is.
Sir, I will tell you. Here, I have gone against the standard teaching because of so many other reasons. And we actually, this patient was not managed in a way with bile. So the timing of the procedure and the type of surgery and the other issues all made me think, otherwise we will have to do multiple surgeries again. So I thought of one shot. If it is okay, I will stop at that moment. Otherwise, we'll lose this patient. This patient was too sick because.
Yeah, Thiru sir, you are saying something.
I would like to say, Prathapan has gone. There was no other go for him except to do this do or die situation. I agree. But having gone in, I will definitely not venture with a hepaticojejunostomy. I would rather drain with a bigger drain that area, allow the patient to go and not even putting a tube into the lumen of the hepatic ducts and all. Leave it alone, allow it to become a fistula, let it heal after 3 months. Once the sepsis, everything subsides, you can go and do a beautiful repair, number one. Number two, I would have rather done resection of the segment which is not good. Even if it is a proximal fistula, I would have brought it as an end jejunostomy and also an end ileostomy, a loop ileostomy where there was an opening in the ileum. There will be 2 stromas and there will be a definite feeding jejunostomy for me. So what I am assuming is, if at all I will be getting only the pancreatic juice because bile is going other way. If over a period of time the whole thing becomes sterile, I can feed the bile through the feeding jejunostomy. I will not have the opportunity of a leak of ileal repair because I have brought it as an ileostomy. Once everything settles down, one by one, I would have done it. This is what I would have done it.
See, this patient, the young patient, age on her side, but then the albumin is 2.1 and 2.1 albumin.
But one more thing before you start. I would definitely not close this abdomen.
Right.
I would have rather given a chance for a repeat wash, have a second look, and I would have put only an offset on a non-irritant over that and made it as a laparostomy rather than doing a complete closure of the abdomen in the first shot. This I would like to add.
Yeah. Here, especially when I was mentioning in the beginning that a CT scan with some contrast, because if a thing of that sort where we could sort of map out the bowels somehow, we could have found out the ileal leak, and then that would have made us to, go in quickly. I mean, that's one of the because here this is an incidental finding, an accidental finding that there's a bowel, distal small bowel perforation. Of course, that made a lot of difference to the prognosis, whatever. And as actually, as Pari says, and also Dr. Thiru says that, this particular hepatic cut end or the leaking part of hepatic jejunostomy will not be a healthy one and will not be a dilated one. And, eventually they may go into stricture if it's not leaked again. So that's the thing about it. Closure of this abdomen is not a great idea, and also doing an anastomosis also is, of course, in science, many things are taught standard in a particular manner. But if we attempt and do things with the guts Pradhaban has, maybe we may come up with some new outcomes. But that's it. The convention is an infected abdomen not to be closed, and also an anastomosis may not be a right thing to do. This is my comment from here. Pradhaban.
Sir, I 100% agree with you because this wound management is a big issue, and the primary closure of the wound, I just approximated that area. I didn't close it completely because the rectus sheath, the underlying muscles and all could not be approximated. That was too friable. So the appearance of the wound, that was just the skin.
Another important comment I want to make, Pradhaban, like you are a very bold person to come out in the open to say these are the mistakes I made. That is very, very appreciable. I mean, of course, the outcomes are good by and large, but you are bold enough to admit that you are going against the tide. And
I think it's a teaching session, and the teachers are the one who should show their mistakes to the students rather than the students show their mistakes to the teachers. I believe that we are making a lot of mistakes and we have to correct it in our life. So this is one situation where I thought I was correct, but I know I am not in a correct position to do this. But somehow I could manage this in the patient. So I think this patient actually she insisted on correcting that fistula because since this patient is having a lot of problem in that area, I thought of not doing a fistula and asked her to be on that fistula, but she was behind me doing all these things. So subsequently, I had to do some procedure.
Prathapan, what is the output of this fistula? What is the output of this fistula now?
No. So that me think the other way. This was very little, and I thought this is not from main anastomotic, from other probably itself beyond the anastomosis or the extent of the limb. Because this was when she had an intestinal obstruction and it drained fecal matter. But once her abdomen is completely settled,
Your bandwidth is very low, Prathapan. Are you there?
I think the image suggests he is already operating. He decided to operate the patient. I can see the towel clips, surgical towel clips and all.
No, but I mean, the closed abdomen looks good. I don't know how we could sort of manage to get all that things together. But I also really do not know whether the patient can insist that, I want my fistula to be closed. What the patient has no idea what it's all about. And what do you say?
No, sir. Sir, actually, we do not know how many months. I mean, he has done the surgery and subsequently it has had some leak, and now we are able to see the jejunal mucosa. Now, we do not know how many months post-op now. And definitely this fistula is not going to heal spontaneously because already you are seeing the mucosa there. So whether it's 3 months or 6 months, she needs another surgery. There is no question about it. This fistula is unlikely to close spontaneously. So she needs another surgery. Whether she demands it or she likes it, we have to give her time and operate the patient.
Now, see, there's a mucosa, or rather, looks like a stoma protruding in the main wound. And shouldn't we find out anatomically as to what exactly, how far is the Hepj and where is the leak and which part of the ball is coming out?
Correct.
But
She needs,
before that, we should know how the patient is. What is her clinical stature now? Has she put on the weight? What is her liver function likely? Everything we should know rather than going and trying to do something with the fistula now. What happened to the HJ? How has she put on weight? How is she faring well?
Sir,
These are the things we should know.
I will tell you. This is after 9 months of the surgery which I did. This patient gained weight and this patient was walking around. But only problem was this prolapsing fistula and the upper part of the wound.
What exactly is prolapsing? Is it
sir, it was an end fistula. No, it was an end fistula, end
of the Ruhae Hepj.
Yeah. It was the terminal portion of the or the blind end. Yeah, blind end. So I thought of correcting it. So since the output was very low and the patient was having a prolapsing mucosa with a single lumen, I thought it will be the end of jejunum, blind end of jejunum.
Now, how could you make out by some imaging that is the blind end of jejunum? Because if it's a blind end of jejunum, you don't need to do a laparotomy. You can just dissect that locally and stitch.
No, I didn't do, sir. I didn't do laparotomy. I just dissected that area.
No.
Sir.
How did you know?
So I had to do.
Which imaging, which investigation told you that it's that part
sir,
of the
I did a I did a contrast. I had lost that image. I did a contrast through that. It was going into the limb, but it looks like the end of that root limb. That is the final.
No, I will go back to the faculty. Sorry, I don't mind. We'll go back to the faculty and would like to know as to what investigations. Of course, Dr. Thiru was pointing out that I look at nutrition, LFTs, this, that, and the other.
So this was done on.
Pari.
This was done on 8th of next year. No, the surgery was done in December 2018, and this was done on August 2019. Okay, so I have given sufficient time for this patient to improve her nutrition, and the patient did not have any issue with the hepaticojejunostomy. She never developed cholangitis or jaundice. So for the time being, her anastomosis is working. It can fail at any time. I don't know. So this is the situation. Finally, I had to manage.
Okay, now for the academic part of it, so I'll ask the faculty what would their investigation be, because it's quite interesting. You said that this is the rule loop, or rather the end of the jejunum which opened up.
Yeah. So I
Ilango, welcome.
Hello, Ilango.
You can.
Yeah. So I would have done a CT fistulogram. 10 years ago, 12 years ago, after doing MCH, and I would have been doing a fistulogram with fluoroscopy and all. Nowadays, it's very clear. I would do a CT fistulogram. I think it will give me all the information. Is there any more collections? Is there any IHBRD? How far the length from the hepatic jejunostomy I got? And everything else I would get. So I'll do a contrast CT with a CT fistulogram.
So, but will it show the biliary tree?
It should, sir. If I'm going to inject the gastrografin into the rule limb, it should show the biliary tree. If it is in continuity and the biliary anastomosis is patent, it should show it well.
Shankar?
Yes, sir. Since Prathapan is telling that it is a blind limb of the jejunum that is formed as something like a stoma, I see this like something like a natural access loop. The blind previous the one way of access loop is previously they do a radiological access in the form of bringing out the blind end and keep it subcutaneously. But here, and he is also telling that the output is less. So there is definitely no urgency because it's going to be a blind end. There is definitely no urgency in closing this because we can always give time for the hepatic jejunostomy complications to manifest itself. In which case, this can act as an access loop and they can do manipulation. But I agree with Pari that since the stoma is there, we have to inject contrast and see where exactly is going. And that will tell me all the information that I want. So definitely
will not MRCP suggest?
I mean,
MRCP.
Everything is complementary, sir.
No,
Suppose you want to know the hepatic functioning of the hepatic jejunostomy, then you can even do a HIDA scan. You can even pass a scope through this stoma and go into the loop and see how is the hepatic. You can visualize the hepatic jejunostomy. So you can do multiple investigations, starting from fistulography to endoscopy. All those things can be done. Yeah.
Thiru sir, your comment?
I agree with the CT fistulography. If you're lucky, you can put in a scope, as Shankar says. But I don't think an MRC is going to be of much help in this case because there'll be overlapping of the bowel. You will not know which bowel is leaking, proximal or the one which is taking the bile down. It's very difficult to say in an MRC. Whereas a CT fistulography will definitely show some light. And if you are lucky, you can do an endoscopy and see whether you're really feeling it is the blind end of the Roux-en-Y, limb. You can easily find out. So that's what I say. I've got a different opinion regarding this MRC.
The issue of doing a CT fistulogram, actually, if it looks like one whole lumen of the bowel, will it not leak out? You should have a situation where you can inject contrast under pressure. And
no,
you can do it under pressure only, it will go into the bile duct. Otherwise, it will not.
No, you can put it in, inflate the balloon of the Foley's catheter, then inject and take a luck.
Right.
That's all.
Ilango, I don't know whether you could get the story. I'll ask Pari to summarize to you in about 4 sentences, and then you can comment on that. Ilango. Yeah, Pari.
Yeah, it's very difficult to comment the course in it, but let me try. It's the lap cholecystectomy done elsewhere. Major bile duct injury involving excision of the bile duct. somebody did a loop hepaticojejunostomy and a jejunojejunostomy
On the table.
on table. Patient developed severe sepsis and multiple intraabdominal collections. He tried to give a wash, but patient deteriorated further and then came to Dr. Prathapan's unit. And after managing initially,
Prathapan can show the picture, the first picture that will explain many things to Ilango.
yeah,
Oh,
this is how the patient was received in Dr. Prathapan's unit.
okay.
And after initial resuscitation and management, and because of several rest constraints, including financial constraints, so they have gone in, they have done a laparotomy. They found that the HA was leaking. There are multiple perforations in the loop hepaticojejunostomy and another perforation in the distal ileum. So they have done a jejunal loop resection, refashioned a new hepaticojejunostomy.
Okay.
They closed the ileal perforation.
Okay.
The patient became okay, except that she developed another intracutaneous fistula.
Okay.
You can show the intracutaneous fistula now, which has blossomed into a proper stoma now.
Okay.
The patient is doing fine. Got a low output intracutaneous fistula.
Okay.
Patient is 9 months post transplant. I mean post surgery, and has come for come requesting closure of this stoma or the intracutaneous fistula.
But it is a biliary fistula.
It's a biliary fistula.
Pure biliary fistula, no intercontents.
Okay. Okay. So
Comments,
I saw
Ilango.
the last picture. So you let the cat out of the bag. So Prathapan, the first one was terrible. The presenting some image was really horrible. It's an uncontrolled biliary fistula. What I would have done is I would have taken first control of the fistula, and
How?
so this is only way, sir. It is an open abdomen already. So I probably would have washed out everything, put a large drain, got control of the proximal
Would you
fistula.
image him? Would you image her?
Yes, I would. Before going in, I would image him. I would do a CT scan.
Why?
In this condition, it's quite open. I would see most of these things we miss out. Interloop abscess, pelvic abscess. Pelvic abscess probably everybody can pick up on a rectal examination. But the interloop abscess is very difficult to image by ultrasound or any other thing. So I prefer a CT scan. Get control of everything, wash as much as possible. One pediatric surgeon taught me to use hot mops. Just try to do as minimal as possible, trying to get the all the fluids drained. So that's all I'll do. And like if
Would
Pari
you
had
like to find out which loop is what and what is draining? Would you like to do put some contrast in one of those lumen to see whether, what exactly the structure along with the CT?
the initial picture which Prathapan showed, I would not attempt any of those things. I would just drain, come out.
Yeah, muted, Ilango. Just get it on here. Yeah, muted, Ilango.
Hello? Am I there, sir?
Yeah.
I wouldn't do an intro. I mean, at that point of time, it's very difficult to feed unless I can give TPN.
Okay.
What was the discussion? I'm curious. What was exactly done?
No, we can't rewind that.
Partners are asking these questions now. I'm really scared.
No. You see, a lot of students watching, they want to know what the new candidate is come up with and what is this protocol would be. Now, another question is, would you operate or would you be brave enough like Prathapan to go in and, try to sort out the bowels and, do some revision surgery, what he has done, what Pari has just described you. If you do, why will you do? If you don't, why don't you?
So to do a hepaticojejunostomy in the presence of gross infection, then I think that's something which I will not do. That is something which I want to do only once. A hepatic jejunostomy, if I do, I want to have a perfect result at that one go. So I will not actually risk my neck and do a high risk anastomosis in an excised bile duct. If I do that, probably I will lose more length if I fail, and I would jeopardize the survival of the patient. I mean, the chance of success may be there, but it's very less. So I wouldn't attempt a hepaticoaguloscopy.
I have a question to Dr. Ilango. Now, after the high type of biliary leak, some of these patients never develop a stricture. They will continue to leak their bile. And in such situation, what will be your take? Will you attempt surgery, or will you wait for as long a time? Because I have seen a patient draining bile for 6 months, completely open hepatic hilum. So in these situations, I think your decision has to be tailored according to the patient. That is,
Prathapan, to
in
go and do
hepatic
the hostel, see,
tetanus.
Pari and me, we have learned the hard way. It's okay to do in a non-dilated duct system. I think now we have developed enough surgical skills. But to take the stitch must take very well.
So I can tell you that I did the anastomosis. It was holding the sutures very well. That is
Okay.
what
I'll ask
made
Dr. Thiru to comment on Ilango, because Ilango is a new candidate who is being examined.
Am I being?
Yeah.
That's
No.
bragging, sir.
Welcome, Ilango. Welcome.
Sir, nice to have you here at LGS, sir.
What Ilango says is well within order. I've got an answer for Prathapan's question. In case the system do not dilate, as he says, it's a prolonged fistula, you cannot. Now it is asking us to restart now. Should we? No.
No.
Hello?
Hello?
Okay.
Yes.
I will rather say, when all the inflammation, everything is subsided, still you're having a leak, you nicely go into the area after clearly dissecting it out. If the opening is less, or you're not able to completely have a edge to suture, you can bring down the hepatic duct plate, core out a little bit of liver tissue, take a chance to extend your opening along the left duct. You will get a sufficient amount of duct to suture. There is no problem at all. So what I'm trying to say is, that is not a constraint. The teaching is you wait till the system dilates. If it doesn't dilate, the whole abdomen has cleared of its abscess, then you go ahead and be confident of what you're doing. If you're confident, you can still go ahead and do a hepaticojejunostomy. They are calling it as a hyojejunostomy now.
Pari, Shankar, Ilango, to this point of Dr. Prathapan, who says that the duct sometimes they don't stricture, they never dilate for a long time. How will you deal with this? What will be the technical thing?
I think Prathapan was not talking about dilatation of the duct. He was trying to, when Ilango was telling in the presence of frank bile and sepsis, no one will do a hepaticojejunostomy. But Prathapan was telling, suppose in a case of bile leak, even after 6 months, the bile is continuously leaking. He was just trying to say, will you not go and do a repair? No, what I want to say is that both the situations are different. Even at the end of 6 months, if the bile is leaking, that becomes a biliary fistula, and it's not a septic abdomen. So you can definitely go and do a repair. But this is a situation where you had a frank sepsis, interloop abscesses, and you have to do something like a damage-controlled thorough peritoneal wash. So both situations are different.
No,
so
my point, Shankar, again, get it right. My point is, at the end of 6 months, there's no ductal dilatation. Now you have to do an anastomosis. You have any special technique, like what Dr. Thiru was mentioning, that how will you, this ducts are still small.
No, ducts are small because there should be some internal fistula through which bile is coming down. So, but unfortunately, the patient cannot survive with such a small internal drainage. So definitely you'll have to do a good repair. There is no question about it. But I think you can wait up to 6 months and then take a call. even at the 6 months, if it is not dilated, still you have to go in and do a hepaticojejunostomy, and or you can refer to Dr. Ilango or Pari, who are good at doing anastomosis at small ducts. So definitely you need to do a hepaticojejunostomy. You can't just.
Pari, you have any suggestions, any technical suggestions?
Yeah, so waiting for 6 months, I think points have been very well covered by Dr. Shankar, Dr. Thiru, and Dr. Ilango also. So it's essentially waiting for tissues to get better, one. And most of the times the fistula stops and duct dilates. Many times, yes, the duct doesn't, the fistula doesn't stop. Even then, even if there is a fistula, many times you see that duct it's started to stricture and the duct would have dilated. And even if the duct is not dilated, it doesn't matter, because you're going to do a side-to-side anastomosis. So you can make as big a stoma as you want, because you're going to
Exactly.
you're going to down the hilar plate, and then if you want a 2 centimeter stoma, go for it. And once you use a loop, and it hardly matters. Even without a loop, if you're going to do a side-to-side anastomosis, it really doesn't matter the duct is dilated or not. What matters is how good the tissues are, whether the tissues are friable, whether they will take the sutures. And you do a anastomosis in a friable tissue, it's more prone to stricture off, and then more prone to leak, and leak causes more stricture. So those are the things which are more important than actually dilatation. So dilatation, if it's there, it helps. If it doesn't there, it really doesn't matter.
Ilango?
Experience,
I
experience
agree with
counts. That is
exactly.
the experience.
Yeah, Ilango.
Yes, Ilango.
So I would do exactly what Pari said. Even if there is an external biliary fistula, I will just wait for a time, have a good control, get the nutrition, infection, everything corrected. I'm not worried about the size of the duct. I'm going to do a French connection, which is a side-to-side hepaticojejunostomy. As long as I want, I'll keep it. I'm very comfortable with that. The size does not matter. I think Pari is also right in saying loops does not matter. You'll get a very good sized duct which can drain everything very well.
Okay, Pradhaban, permit me again to interrupt here.
Sir, can I just put a
yes.
If there is an external biliary fistula which is lasting for 6 months, I will actually be secretly happy, because it's going to lead me to the duct directly.
Right.
It's going to lead me to the duct. In fact, it makes the surgery easier many times.
Yes.
Yeah,
No,
Pradhaban, if you permit me again.
Patta,
Yes,
one suggestion.
Yes, sir.
Actually, I should not say, we had a lot of experience in Narayana. Dilatation of the duct is not a requirement at all. What is required is complete settlement of the sepsis. Patient is on the positive nutrition side. This is what is important. And if you go at it, if there is a fistula for such a long time, the edges are so nice to take a bite. They are rather thick. They are not friable, provided you give a sufficient. If you bring down the hilar plate and make a nice, if you're lucky to get a long left duct, you can make a thing and do a nice side-to-side anastomosis. This is what a small experience of mine in Narayana.
Fine, thank you, sir. But Pradhaban, before you proceed, I'll put the present position to the faculty. There is a prolapse, that thing you can see. All the faculty to address how they would approach this. Starting with Pari.
Yeah, as I said, I will do a good CT fistulogram. What I need to see is, I want to see how far the hepaticojejunostomy is away. Taking it for granted that it's the end of the rule loop, I want to know how far away the hepaticojejunostomy anastomosis is to this mucosa that I'm
How does
seeing.
it matter?
Because if it is too close, I'll have difficulty in excising it and closing it off. So if I have a longer loop, I know I have a lot more to play, got more leverage, and I probably will just dissect it free and just fire a stapler. I know that it's far away. If it is very close, then I have to be much more careful, and probably I don't have a good length to play with. I'll be much more careful. So I'll do a proper CT fistulogram, make sure what the anatomy is, and also make sure that there is nothing that the hepaticojejunostomy needs And then if this is the only issue, then I just go in, dig it out, and try to either staple it away or excise it and close it primarily by hand suturing.
Shankar?
Yes, sir. Now it's 9 months post-op, and Prathapan says that hepatic jejunostomy is functioning nicely. There is, which means the LFT should be normal, and of course I will confirm with some more investigations to make sure that the hepatic jejunostomy is okay. And since he is also telling that the output through this fistula is minimal, that means the blind limb should be significantly longer. If it's very close to the hepatic jejunostomy, it should put out bile. So I think there will be a length available, which once again I will confirm, and then close this. Yeah.
Colombo?
The one thing that I would do is, this is almost like an access loop, sir. The picture which Prathapan has shared looks almost like what we would do as an access loop. So I don't think so. It's very difficult to staple that area because normally for my rule loops, the left suture will be about 2 or 3 centimeters from the cut edge of the jejunum. And personally, I would do a fistulogram, make sure that there is no distal obstruction before I attempt to do anything, because it's a small, low output fistula. It should heal very well. Either the tract must be short or the tract must be really wide, or because it's prolapsing, I think the mucosa has become completely mucosa covered. So at that time, you can do a cautery, make a simple stitch, provided there is no distal obstruction. That's what I would have done. Looking at your notes, which is obvious on the slide, you put a linear cutting stapler. That means you had longer length. Apart from all the comments, that's the only thing I would do. I would look at the distal loop, whether it's draining freely.
I would like to say, Prathapan is the best judge. He must be knowing how much of blind limb he has left. So he is the surgeon. He knows he has left it 2 centimeters, 2 inches, 3 inches. He knows well. If he is pretty sure that is only the end of the blind end is opening up and showing, it is only the eversion and prolapse of the mucosa is preventing to heal. If he is comfortable enough to say that it is only the blind end that is there, and the length he knows, he can either fire a stapler or suture it, put it subcutaneously and wait for something. Sometime it may heal off completely.
Yeah, Prathapan, what have you done?
Sir, I have done this. Then
You can make it full screen.
Yeah, some problem with.
Okay.
So this was the appearance of the bone now. Yeah,
That's a very good result, Prathapan.
What incision was given? What was the incision for this surgery?
So I have gone through the incision which the original
Full
surgeon
incision.
put
You
now.
open the full incision.
No, this was the open wound. You know, you got that the first image. This was the first image. I will show you the first image.
No, for this surgery.
The question Pari has is, have you done just like ileostomy closure circumstomal incision, or you opened the entire incision?
Sir, I have some problem.
That's okay.
So
you tell us. Just wait.
No. This was the. I just again. So I have just done a circum around the collapsed mucosa. I put the incision. I have the video. I presented that video. Something happened.
That's okay.
Yeah. You can see the video. I just opened that area only. I didn't do a full laparotomy, and finally dissected the entire thing. You can see the other area I have not opened. Only the area around the loop I have done. And finally, this was the same wound which originally they made. Now this patient is not having even an incisional hernia. I don't know how it happened. Now, as she came to visit me last Monday, so that made me to present this case. So I thought of presenting this patient. So management of
that scar can be excised and a pencil line scar can be made.
So I will try next time, sir.
Yeah.
So management of post-op biliary fistulas has changed from aggressive surgical strategy to an aggressive, less invasive strategy in which interventional radiology plays a critical role. That is the current status for all post-surgeons. Don't go in a hurry to correct it. Don't be very heroic. But prevention is always better than cure in biliary injuries. So try to be safer as a surgeon. This is the message I have to put. Thank you.
Pari, I want all the faculty to give a final sort of summarized comments on, what have they learned, or,
I think it all started during lap chole. Suppose we done a lap chole major bile duct injury, for heaven's sake, don't try to do something, try to repair and make things worse like this. Call in somebody who, if it's available, or just put a drain and refer. You have to be bold enough to go and face the patient and say that something bad happened, but I don't want to make it worse. And then this is what we are going to do. This is the plan. We are going to be with the patient all through, and we'll make sure that it's all sorted out. This is what the surgeon has to be courageous enough to go and tell the patient that something bad happened, and we are going to be with the patient, take him through the various surgical or non-surgical things that is required to sort out the patient. So we should, that is what should have been done, and this could have been totally avoided.
Radha,
sir,
regarding the medico-legal aspects, I'll tell you. The court do not punish you for injuring a bile duct.
right,
But if you are not an experienced surgeon, if you do a primary repair and get into a complication, you are punished.
right,
Medico-legally. That is, you are punished. So the moment you sustain the injury for the patient, if you are not a routine biliary surgeon, you must put a drain and refer, or call some experienced biliary surgeon to do the work from them. Then only you are covered under medico-legal aspect. Injuring is not wrong, but injuring after that, what you are doing, you must write it in your case sheet. If you are confident enough to do it, otherwise call a biliary surgeon to do it. He will do whatever he needs, either to drain or primary repair, that it is wish. He takes over from you. This is the only thing I want to say.
So one delicate question here, sir. The second surgeon operates and that also fails. The both surgeons are liable, or the only first surgeon is liable?
No, second surgeon is liable.
No, nobody is liable.
No, second surgeon is not liable, provided he has taken everything into consideration, because your legal thing will be referred to a specialist who has been doing all this work. He will say you would have drained it, you would not have attempted this thing. So many things they will say. But the responsibility of the first surgeon completely goes off the moment you hand over or shift the patient to a regular biliary surgeon. This is what the medical legal aspect of it.
Sir, if the onus is
No.
on the second biliary surgeon,
They will not take up.
Tell me.
if the onus is
Sir,
on the second biliary surgeon and he fears a medical legal suit, would they not refuse care, sir?
No, they will not refuse. You will have to say, I will do this. This man has done it. Being an experienced biliary surgeon, you will not do a wrong thing. You will do only the right thing if you are really a good biliary surgeon. That's what I believe.
Shankar.
So here, can I make a comment on that?
Yeah.
Dr. Thiru. So suppose this patient was managed initially and for the time being, and this patient was referred to a liver surgeon or the biliary surgeon only when he thinks this patient cannot be managed by myself. And subsequently, the biliary surgeon operates. This is a situation happened in this case. And how can the second surgeon be liable for all the damages made by the first surgeon?
This first surgeon has done all medical legally wrong things. And at the time of the patient was trying to get into the graveyard, the patient has been referred to you or some surgeon. You are not liable.
Yeah.
You are doing a damage control. That is what it is.
Okay.
Shankar, your comments.
Yes, sir. I mean, the very fact that this surgeon has gone in and done a loop hepatic jejunostomy shows that he does not have any idea about how to do a biliary enteric anastomosis. Absolutely no idea about a biliary enteric anastomosis, and he is not aware of the fact that we have to use a defunctioned loop of loop of jejunum. So definitely, I agree with Professor Tirunavakasu. If a general surgeon does a biliary injury, he has to refer the case to a surgical gastroenterologist or a HPB surgeon who is qualified. And if he does that, he is safe because injuring the bile duct is not a problem. And after, of course, subsequent what happens to the patient is, I don't think we have to discuss about that. Once the patient has been referred to a specialist, then a specialist will do the job. And of course, there can be complications, but those things are not liable for any medical legal things because finally everything will be referred to some surgeon from a central institute or a government institute, and who is going to be a specialist, and he is going to give the opinion. So that's not a problem. But definitely the primary surgeon, who is a general surgeon, should not venture into all these totally unscientific things and repeatedly opening and causing more injuries and finally giving a very bad patient to Prathapan. Of course, what he has done is
Shankar sir, I will play the devil's advocate here. Okay.
Yeah.
What if a specialist surgeon causes the same injury? Okay, you take me. I go do a lap chole. I have a terrible day. I cut the duct. What should I do?
Call me.
No. See, basically.
The professor has the answer. He's not joking. He's just.
Yeah, so that is
No.
So that is the best thing to do. Call another person. If you are set up, if your mind is not
correct,
you call your friend or the next surgeon who is experienced.
Finally, the referee who is going to be giving the third opinion in a case of medical legal thing, he can decide in any way. But just because we are qualified and we know the concepts, there is every possibility that we may not be penalized. Okay. But I don't think any qualified surgical gastroenterologist worth his salt will do a loop hepaticojejunostomy.
That's true.
Do you agree with my?
I agree with you on that, sir.
A newly passed out a GI surgeon can, if he ends up in a bile duct injury, if he does a hepaticojejunostomy Roux-en-Y, it's fine. He has every right to do it.
Sir, that's exactly what I wanted to say. It does not matter whether you have done this, whether you are senior when you have a bile duct injury. A couple of years ago, one of the seniors I worked with had a bile duct injury. He recognized immediately, and I was having coffee. He said, "Come up. I've got everything ready. Get your loop. Do a Roux-en-Y." I mean, that surgeon is very well qualified. He can do a hepaticojejunostomy, but I did it. Being a younger surgeon compared to age, we can still do it. When I have lap chole problems, and if I have some questions, I call Vimal. And if Vimal has a problem, he calls me. We just look at each other because it's a different perspective. I think whenever we do a bile duct injury, we are not in the right mindset to do a repair. It is good to call anyone junior, qualified, who will do a good job and be done with it. I think Pata Radhakrishna summarized it very easily. Call me.
No, I'm joking.
Actually, there was a case where the primary surgeon did again a hepaticojejunostomy after injuring. He was not in a proper state of mind. The court clearly said you should have taken another person who is well versed with this. When you have completely exhausted yourself over the table and you are not in a proper mind to do this, even though you are qualified. They have not penalized him, but the court has definitely said this. Is one of the courts in North. So we'll have to keep it in mind. There is nothing wrong in calling another person. Otherwise, go and have a cup of coffee think about what are you going to do. Come after 15 minutes and do it. That's all. Will you do hepaticojejunostomy or not is a big $1 million question. That we'll have to have a different session.
Pradhapan, there's a question by Deepak in the chat box. If you see if a clip is applied to the cut end of the CBD, whether it should be removed to drain or kept till final repair.
Usually. So we don't have to remove the clip. When there is a clip completely occluding, it will become a biliary stricture, no? So it will help.
Proximal thing will dilate.
It will dilate and it makes us surgery easier. I think these are difficult. We never need the clip completely occluding that area. We see partial application and leaking from one side. So never ligate the bile duct if you don't know how to do hepaticogenesis. This was the teaching by all teachers. When you don't have the courage to do it, you ligate it and send to a person. I think there is no point in ligating, just put a drain. That's it. Never ligate the bile duct because it will make the bile duct ischemic and lose another 1 or 2 centimeters of the bile duct.
If you've got a bad luck, you'll go in for cholangitis because you're ligated the duct. If it's only a partial cut, leave it alone. Let it become a controlled fistula and do it. That is what I would like to do.
So any other comments from the participants? Rohit has got a question, sir. Please tell when to do primary repair versus hepaticogenesis and intra bile duct injury. Right?
I think the cutting, most of the time it happens, will have some ischemia to the bile duct, or we use cautery and all. So if there is cautery injury or ischemia, if you I think is higher. If you have a fresh cut, and if you're experienced in doing the duct-to-duct anastomosis as with the transplant surgeons do, I think you can do it. If the loss is less, you can directly suture it. If the loss is more, you can put a T-tube or some other internal stents. So that is the technique you can. But longer for long-term follow-up, in situations of the bile duct damage during lap poly, the stricture is higher. But only thing is you can access these strictures through the endoscope or the ERCP. So the managing by endoscopy may be possible if you have done an end-to-end anastomosis. Otherwise, you have to see the help of an interventional radiologist.
So I think we had a very, very interesting session, Pradhapan, at your expense, and always you come up with such wonderful stories which generate a lot of discussion and a lot of contradictory opinions. And
next week I will come with a story where I failed. Okay. You said I'm coming up with only success story. I have to come with failure stories.
I think you've become brave. You're becoming braver by the day. Thank you, Pari. Thank you, Dr. Shankar, Dr. Prasthina and Nilango, and thank you, Pradhapan, so much for your efforts. Thanks, everyone. We shall again meet on Saturday next.